All right, everybody, we're going to get started here tonight with our largest ever Slow City Church all-family meeting. You're here. Give yourself a round of applause. Thanks for being here tonight. Tonight, we're just going to have an opportunity to do just that, just to kind of talk about kind of the state of where we're at as a church. I want to calm any fears. The first time my parents ever had a family meeting, it was not a good meeting, and they soon divorced after it, all right? So this is not one of those meetings, all right? So there's no everything's okay, everything's good. We just like to do these historically. I was trying to be funny, but it was kind of sad. I'm sorry. But everything's up from here, yeah. We just want to do this pretty much annually, every single year, just to give an opportunity for the church to just be together, kind of give a run through of who's who and what's what and what's happening just with the current state of affairs in the life of the church. We say it often, but this is a we church and not a me church, and so we're going to share some numbers tonight. We're going to share staff. We're going to share some stuff about the building, and I first want to thank you. Thank you for being here. It shows your investment in this place alone, or maybe just your interest. But either way, thank you for being interested and invested in the life of the church. Thanks for showing up tonight and being a part of this with us. That's why I love this place and this church, is because of you, because of many of you in this room that I've been able to journey with over the past 5.5 years. Seeing a group of us pray at a vegetable butcher restaurant that is now closed before launch, and to see just what God's been doing in the church that he's been building. And so thanks for being here. I'm going to tee it up for Tim. And this is Tim, if you don't know Tim. And Tim's incredible. And we're really glad that you're here. So the meeting is officially started when Tim starts talking. Here we go.
Right now. There we go. Well, first off, I just want to invite our staff team up. If you want to come on up and just join us on the stage. I know you're looking at me like deer in the headlights. Staff, you're okay.
Okay.
You're not in trouble. Yeah. We're going to celebrate you and let people know who you are. We have such an incredible team that God's really helped put together, and there's been a lot of transitions and changes, myself included, of jumping on just about 7 months ago. And we want you all to see the faces and people that are making things happen. Luke is back there still working. He's still figuring
working.
it
He can't
all
stop.
out.
He loves to work.
Won't
Look at
stop. And want to introduce you to some of the people here. How many of you have been around since the launch? How many of you are like, yeah, there it is. How many of you have been around for less than 2 years? Less than 2 years. How many of you have been around less than a year? Yeah, there's a good group of you. All right, so for those of you who've been around just about as long as I have, less than a year, these may be people that you don't know yet. So in seeking to just honor your engagement and presence here, we want to let you know who is on our staff team, what they do, and the amazing people that they are. So how many of you know Brent? Yeah, he's our lead pastor and does an incredible job at being our lead pastor and the founding pastor of Slow City Church. For those of you who are like, what does a lead pastor do? Very briefly, yeah, why not, right? He speaks every Sunday, which means he has to come up with inspiring, intriguing, wonderfully biblical, theologically correct, filled with stories and keeping us both entertained, educated, informed, and formed through a 30 to 40-minute message that may go longer if needed, but may not.
We try and keep it to 30. It never happens.
You know,
it never happens.
You have a lot of good things to say. So beyond that, though, he also oversees our management team and makes sure that that team is working and cohesive, keeping our church accountable and helping to support and lead us so well. Helps to oversee our staff team, obviously, and provides wisdom and direction, discernment in so many different ways throughout the life of this church. So, man, just super grateful for you. And Jenna Bramer, there she is, women's ministry. Yeah, Yeah, stop. Ministry, associate ministry director. That's the official title, a fish. Yeah, and helps oversee, well, doesn't help, does, just oversees our women's ministry. And those of you who've been a part of that know how amazing of a job that she does with that time in and time out. And serves on our communication team, too. If you've ever heard Jenna speak, you are welcome, because she is a gift to our community and does such an incredible job at communicating the gospel and spiritual truths here, and super grateful for all that you do and all the things that no one knows, the people that you meet with and encourage on the daily. Whenever I see Jenna, she's coming from a meeting or coming from a lunch or going to a meeting or going to a lunch. So she is the connector of connectors here, and super grateful for you. Heather Minnick, yes.
Heather!
The ministry assistant, and she's part-time. And when I look at her job description, I'm like, I don't know how you squeeze all this into part-time, but somehow she does. And if you've ever gotten an email from Slow City Church, it's probably from her. When you first came to Slow City Church, you filled out that little welcome, connect card. Heather was the one who emailed you and helped you get connected and find your way as a part of this community. And she does so much to help people get connected, following up with phone calls and benevolence needs and questions about everything. I feel like you help to navigate. Kristen O'Block is our kids director. So that's new news.
New news.
New news. She just accepted that position yesterday, so it's very exciting. She was serving as a kids resident before that, just for like a month and a half, but was serving in kids for how long? How long were you serving in kids for? About 2 years. So she's just a faithful volunteer that took on a residency and now is the kids director. So we're super excited to have her on board, and she does a great job. And it's only a day in. You're already crushing it. You're already crushing it. Many of you know Taylor Pearson, and yes. Her official title is ministry resident, but she essentially is our volunteer coordinator, and all of our Sunday morning teams, minus kids and youth, she's helping to schedule, to get trained, get on the same page so that we know what we're doing on a Sunday, and has just done an incredible job helping to organize those teams, and super grateful for her. She is getting ready to move on. She's moving back to Seattle, back home for her. She's going to be pursuing a master's program up there, and super grateful for all that she's done.
Really grateful for you, Taylor.
Yeah. So she'll be here till towards the end of February, so make sure you say hey to Taylor, thank her for all of her service. You all know Abby. She is our next-gen pastor and has done such an incredible job serving both college-age ministry, youth ministry, and kids ministry, and has stepped in the gap, really. Since I've been here, she's been the all-star, just spinning all the plates and filling in and doing such an incredible job with college-age youth and helping to oversee kids. And she is going to be moving on as well. Many of you have heard that news. If you haven't heard that news, now you know. She's going to be moving back home and closer to family. And she's going to be greatly missed, the amazing support that she's given this community and our kids and college age and youth, and super grateful for you. Thanks. Vanessa Coburn is our creative director. And so anything that you see on social media or the website, she's helping to organize and curate and put out. Also helping just create environments for us, making sure our office actually works as an office, making sure this space feels like a warm, hospitable space for us to come and worship in and amidst. And you can find her at College Age Ministry, helping out and serving and worship leading from time to time. And I'm a big fan because she's also my wife. So thanks for your amazingness, Vanessa. And last but not least, the Luke Lyons.
There he is.
He is our worship director and does such an incredible job at leading both our worship volunteer teams and tech teams. So anything that's in the back or in the front or people helping with those areas, Luke is overseeing and managing and leading and somehow does that and still leads worship on a Sunday and has like a mind to be able to pray and lead us to the presence of God and just does an incredible job. So thanks, Luke, for all that you do. Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Would you give these guys a big... We just wanted to introduce you to them.
Staff team, Slow City
Thank you,
Church,
guys.
you're amazing.
If you've been new to Slow City for a while, or if you're new to Slow City, we've heard a lot like, who's on the staff and who's on the team? So we felt like that was necessary for you to see these people and meet everybody. And this is Tim. Tim has introduced himself as the executive pastor on staff, but you have to know that Tim kind of works to maintain a level of health and thoroughness through all the things. I think in squiggly lines, and I can be a steam engine, and he kind of lays out the railroad tracks. And so he executes a lot. He works on kind of the strategy of groups and pulling everybody together. A lot of our team reports to Tim, and he oversees the finances under the umbrella of the management team. And he and I spend a ton of time together just dreaming, arguing. In a good way, not arguing, but like just talking through like where we're going as a church and all the big things that are happening. So Tim has been incredible. If you've met him, he's been phenomenal as well. One of the questions that many people ask as they kind of approach Slow City for the first time is like, what does your oversight structure look like? And so when Slow City launched, we had an external management team, and what that means is we had management team or leadership team, we'll use kind of both of those words, kind of structured from different parts of the country. We have a management team member who lives in Ventura, actually two. A management team member who lives in Dallas, Texas. He's an executive pastor at a partnering church. We have a management team member from Louisville, Kentucky, the church that we moved from. A management team member from Cincinnati, Ohio. A management team member from Bloomington, Illinois. And they initially were kind of the overarching governing board for the church that did not exist at that point. And they gave accountability, they gave financial oversight, and they made sure that in that season, Jenna and I were healthy, and we met monthly, and that still has maintained. But as we have grown as a church, the goal is to roll off of external or not local oversight team members and to bring on local team members. And so that's been in process. And so I want to just point out two people, and maybe two and a half, two people who are on that team now who have been kind of nominated and vetted from within, and then join that management team. So if we say anything wrong, you talk to them, all right? So Michael Taves, where are you? Michael serves on the team, and he and Trisha have been huge. And Kevin Pettit was a recent add this year, and he's been fantastic. And recently, Patrick Bide has been nominated to that team. Where's Patrick? Patrick's back here. So we're going to take a vote really quick, yay or nay on Patrick. And no, but those individuals have been huge for me locally. And huge for our team. And so they just provide, Michael has helped kind of be a part of the finance team and just oversees all of that accountability, and they've been incredible. So that's our staff team, kind of our oversight team, and that team will continue to develop and grow in the future. They're on the leadership team now. In the future, it'll develop into an elder board. We're not there yet, because we're still young. We're growing, but we're a big baby right now. And so I just kind of want to, before Tim kind of rolls into some of the meat and potatoes of everything, I just want to kind of take a breath collectively and kind of think back over the past year. If you've been journeying with us for 4.5 years, since September 8th of 2019, or if you're new this past year, a year ago this January, we were still gathering together on that parking lot. And then it started raining, as it is tonight, and we were pivoting. We went to the high school for 1 or 2 weeks, and then we went to Broad Street, Acacia Creek complex, and we were all crammed in there like sardines. It was incredible, kind of beautiful. Thank you, Peter Warhunski. I see you. Where you at? Right there. He allowed us to use his office space for that. And Hank Neeson, if Hank's here, made that happen. And then on April 2nd, we moved in here. Tim was actually here. Tim and his family were here, and we prayed for them that first Sunday in this room. And on Easter Sunday, we had about 1,400 people on this campus for Easter. And I don't know if you've kind of journeyed with us for a while, but I've had some moments where I'm like, what in the world is happening, and how do we do this? And we've just seen God do an incredible work this year of really growing the church wide, absolutely, but also depth. We've seen more connection and engagement in serving than ever before. You probably have one of these on your little table. These are kind of already old numbers. We have 250 people on a serve team, which is I'm maybe the most proud of thing on there, that people are invested in this local church and are showing up and are filling in potholes when they can, are directing traffic, are holding babies, are welcoming people. And it's just been such a joy for me to be a part of this with you. For context, I found this interesting as we were just looking back. In January of 2022, on the weekend that just passed, 2 weekends ago, January 2022, we had 350 people show up to church, and we were floored. We were like, what is happening? In 2023, on the same weekend, we had 551 individuals show up to church, so a year later. And then this year, we had 820 people show up to church, and this past weekend, we had 850 people show up to church, and we were like, okay, how do we got to steward this, and we want to steward this. This past year, we saw 480 first-time guests. And I give you those numbers just to not to go like, look at us, but first to say, help, but to also say, man, people are hungry. People are hungry for faith. They are hungry for connection. They are hungry for the supernatural. They're hungry for an encounter with God. They're hungry for depth and rootedness in faith. They're hungry for friendship. And it is our joy, and I think our responsibility to kind of create those spaces of depth and friendship and opportunity. And it's just been a really, really, really cool season of kind of hanging on for the ride and saying, God, wherever you lead us, we'll go. And our hands are open, and we'll just continue to be faithful. So that's kind of where we're at today. We're now have 3 services. This time last year, we were meeting at 9 and 10:30. Now we're meeting at 9 and 10:30 and 6 p.m. Our 6 p.m. service has been really unique. I thought it would pull middle school and high school parents off of Sunday morning and give them a chance to worship as their kids went to middle school and high school. It kind of worked. But really, it's created a whole new demographic for our church because there are a lot of working individuals who work on Sunday mornings who could not go to church. I met an Uber driver this past Sunday who has dropped off people to churches all over this city for the past 3 years and has not been able to go herself because that's how she's paying for her kids. She's a single mom. And she came to church for the first time in over 3 years here because we're the only place that offered an evening service. And I was just like, that's kind of stuff just kind of hits me. So I'm talking too much, but we're at a place right now of growth. We're at a place right now where we're in a season of staff transition. And we're in a season right now where we're saying, okay, Lord, what's in front of us? And so I'm going to let Tim talk about kind of the financial realities of our church. And there is going to be time for Q&R. So if anybody has a question at any point tonight and you just want to raise your hand, feel free to ask it. Okay? Sound good? Tim.
Sounds good. Right on. So we're going to dive into just a little budget update so you guys know what's happening with the finances here. And this is all a part of what Brent alluded to in terms of stewardship. We're just simply trying to be good stewards of what God's doing in and through and amidst Slow City Church and San Luis Obispo. And so this is helping to give you a view of what that looks like, how things are going, how you can be praying, how you can be stepping in the gap with us in this. And here's some updates. We've got pie charts. So if you want to take a picture of that pie chart and you want to study it and ask me questions, I am always down to talk about pie charts. That is, I'm all about it. So,
And we're always up for follow-up conversations.
Yeah.
And if you want some of these documents or information, just let us know. We'll give them to you.
Right
You're a big
on.
believer in transparency.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about giving first and give you guys a little bit of an overview of what that's looked like. Our fiscal year changed last year from January to December, from January to December to July
through June.
to June.
And it changed it changed in June. So we had to
Yeah.
pivot pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my first month here. It was the way management team just saying like, let's see you do this. And it was a lot of fun. And I'm just joking. So our updates here for giving is July through December 2023. Okay, so that's kind of the information we're sharing because we're halfway through our fiscal year as a church, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. All right, so internal giving is 79% of our giving was for $476,864. And then there's outside support at the very bottom there. It's 12%, $75,000. And the reason that those things are delineated is because we have churches that serve on the management oversight team and people who know and believe in Slow City Church and Brent and who are still continuing to give to support this congregation, which is a pretty amazing thing. And the mission and compassion piece, that is people who've designated funds specifically towards whether it's One for One or Meals for Hope or something like that. That is people who've designated money specifically for that. So that is counted in internal giving, but we've kind of designated that differently so that we can track that and make sure it's actually being spent towards benevolence and mission and compassion needs. And then program revenue, that is 3%. That is some interest we get from some savings. That's registration fees from like camps, sale of sweatshirts, things like that. So that's kind of where giving ended up. We did exceed our goal or a projected income or projected giving for the year, and our projected giving was $547,500 at this point in the year. So we exceeded that, which is amazing, and thank you for your continued generosity in that way. Let's look at expenses, and then we'll have a chance for some Q&R here. One thing I would say specifically about giving, because we were over that projected number was over $58,213, which is really encouraging to see. That external support is dropping off through the rest of this year. So 2024 will be the last year that we are receiving external support from those different churches and donors who are stepping into that. So we're looking to kind of bridge that gap as we go through this year. Together as a faith community. All right, let's look at some of the expenses here. Our budgeted expenses were $545,286. Our actual total ended up being $654,981. So we're over in our expected expenses. A big part of that, I would say the entire part of that, is because of our change of fiscal year. We had a budget that we had set before I got here for the entirety of 2023. That was from January through December. And there's some expenses that are designated at different months that when we change the fiscal year, like youth camp fees for like the bus, which is a huge expense, like $20,000, right? We ended up paying for this fiscal year, which we didn't plan for, when there was some leftover kitchen remodel stuff that we did in the space and a door we put in for the patio that the management team had approved, in the old budget that then got carried over. So there were some big expenses that we had in June and July that ended up showing up on the books for this year that we didn't have accounted for as we were putting in the budget. So keep that in mind as we're talking about expenses. You can see some percentages here, and we're right in line with what would be some normal church average expense categories. The first one is our operating expenses. Normal average is between 20-35%. This is administrative fees and facility fees. We're at $116,799. That's 18% of our operating budget are those operating expenses. And then ministry and worship is the next one. This is going to be from kids to youth to college age, next phase, men's, women's, all of those expenses, together nights, things like that. And that is 20% of our budget, $131,847. Again, that's well within that kind of average amount, which is about 15-20% you're looking at in that category. And then mission and compassion is next. We're at a solid 10% there, $64,028. This has been given away to nonprofits, to causes, Meals for Hope, our Christmas project that we just finished up, and being able to meet ongoing benevolence needs that come in, I would say, weekly at this point, of people asking just for different forms of assistance, and we're able to say yes because we're generously giving to our community and helping to support people in need. And then last is just staffing. Normal average here is between 45-55%. We're at 52% there at $342,307. Staffing for the past 6 months has fluctuated a bit between 7 to 10 people on the team, so you can kind of have an idea of what's going on with staffing. And I think that can be a sensitive one, but I don't know if you know this. It's really expensive to live in San Luis Obispo, and in order to have people who could actually survive and staff people who can stay in this place, it's tricky. It's tricky to figure out how to navigate that, but we've been able to stay within a percentage that's reasonable, and super grateful for that. So here's some notes about expenses. I already explained about the budgeting piece and where those overages came from. Facility expenses have jumped for us, and suddenly and unexpectedly at the beginning of this year. We were expecting a bit more of kind of a ladder climb into what would be closer to market rate for our offices and the use of this space, which is not our space. We essentially just get to use this Wednesdays, Sundays, and a few times during the month.
Although we've been taking it on Tuesday nights recently.
We kind of just took over. There's not a lot else happening here right now, but we have a thriving church community that is utilizing this space, which is really great to see and to be a part of. But just to give you an idea of what that jump was, so the past 6 months for facilities, we paid $33,682, projected over the next 6 months based upon what has been asked of us in being here is that we will be paying $72,165. So that's more than double the amount than what we had planned on giving and paying, not giving, paying for this space. So with that, I just want you to know that there's a gap. So there's a gap with our the external giving dropping off, and then there's a gap with facilities that we're trying to make up. And with that, it adds up to about $17,000 per month is the gap we're trying to close, okay? And throughout the next year, and I just want us to know, first off, that's totally doable. That is a totally reasonable gap to close. That may seem like that's a lot of money. It is, but we have a lot of people that are a part of this community that we're reaching, that we're serving, and that there is totally a realistic way to be able to close that gap. And some ways that we can do that, and then we'll open up for some questions. Does that sound good? All right. Some ways that we can do that. One is, if you're not giving yet, just to start somewhere. Wherever that might be, whatever is in your heart, wherever that starting point is, just start with that. Be faithful to what's in your heart to give. Secondly is to consider giving regularly. So maybe you're like, yeah, I give when I feel inspired and led to give. Maybe prayerfully consider, what would it mean to give regularly? I don't know about you, but I count on a paycheck at a certain time of the month so I can pay my bills. It also helps us when you give regularly, because then we can actually budget and plan effectively and be able to navigate changes and make wise decisions as we go. Thirdly is to consider giving a percentage based on your income. So I have some scripture references there. And this is another topic along with pie charts and spreadsheets that I love to talk about. So if you have questions about this, I would love to chat through generosity, what that means. But give a percentage of your income. This means moving from just this is what's in my heart and this is what I'm going to give regularly to I'm going to give 3%. And I've been surprised. I've actually, in the last church we're in, there was a person who told me this story about how they decided they were going to give 5%. They couldn't get to that 10% goal, and they're like, I'm going to give 5%. And they got this huge raise the next month. And they're like, oh. But then they're like, oh, like, wow, like God is responding in some ways. Not to say that we give to get, because that's a weird form of greed. That's not what I'm saying. Okay, that is like manipulative and strange. We're not after that. But to take steps of faith and growing in our generosity and considering what that can look like, okay? And then prayerfully considering tithing. For some of you, you're like, I give a percentage, it's regularly, it's what I can do, and maybe there's a jump that you're ready for, and you're like, okay, I'm going to take a step into giving 10% of what God has provided for me, and I'm going to seek to step into that. Many of you in this room, I am sure, do that. That's something that both Brent and myself and our families value. We're not asking you to do something that we ourselves do not practice or do, and it's an expectation even from our staff. It's part of our employee handbook that it's expected that you would tithe. So know that even as employees, we're modeling this, living into this, and sacrificing to be able to come together and step into the gap that exists. And then lastly is just consider generosity above and beyond the tithe. I have a story there, Luke 21, 1-4. It's the widow's mite, and Jesus is watching people give at the temple, and he sees this widow give all that she had. It was a small amount, but it was all that she had. And he celebrated that because of the faithfulness, the trust that she had stepped into. Now, I'm not saying you could also be the widow and give all that you have, but I am saying that Jesus celebrates and sets an example of generosity that's one that is higher and bigger and greater than what most of us would have faith to step into. And what would it look like for us to be a church that embodies generosity? We already are. I will say that. I think when people think of Slow City Church, the folks that I've met outside, they're like, oh, you guys do really cool work in the community. You support some really great nonprofits. You feed the hungry. You step into gaps that need to be stepped into. But how much more could we do as a community if we continue to grow in that generosity? That's what I'm most excited about as we talk about what that looks like.
Any questions?
Yes.
We're not to the building update.
That's the next point. That's what we're going to talk about next. Yeah.
Yeah. So should we get to the building update?
I think they want the building update.
Yeah. And would anybody else? I can talk about it.
Any finance pieces apart from the building?
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
John.
How much is the giving increased every year?
Yeah, and that's what I don't want to miss in this, because I think the gap that we got to make up. I'm not sure of that, but I know that every bar that we've set, I think last year we had a meeting like this, and we said, hey, we're going to try and tackle. I believe the number is 75% or 70% of the budget internally, and every kind of bar that we set, the church has exceeded, and that's been true this year. We're right on track. Just so you know, we're doing really well. I know when we talk about those numbers, there could be a feeling of like, oh no, we're in trouble. We're okay. We're okay, and we're still growing into generosity. And so this is we're on the normal trajectory for a church plant. So there was external fundraised, and committed, and there's been this gradual handoff. And so we can get you those numbers if you'd like. But it's been a gradual increase every single year, and that's been incredible. Yeah. 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 I think you're speaking to maybe, did you guys support an internship? Yeah. And so there isn't a staff salary bucket, but that was unique in that we had some interns who wanted to be on and needed to raise their own living wage. And so we don't have a staff bucket. The only two buckets are mission and compassion, and just the general fund. We are going to be generous. Some people like to give to the mission and compassion fund because I think maybe they feel more comfortable knowing that the money that they're giving into that bucket is going directly to rent or to tires or to medical expenses for someone. It helps the church to just give, all of us just to give to the big bucket, because we already have a set standard of we're going to at least meet those benevolence needs and more. I think our benevolence fund has increased off the charts in the past 4 years, and so we're going to have a minimum standard of 10%. We've hit, I think, 15, 16, 18% some years of giving outside. So I would just say giving to the general fund is super helpful.
I think you just answered it. But, so I saw 38,000 roughly in giving, and then 64 out,
Yeah,
and that was 10%.
yeah.
So
And that's half the year.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
but percentage-wise, it was 10%.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of that whole.
Yeah, we're tithing as a church. We're like giving to the community as a church as well. And so we have local partners, we have global partners that we're trying to develop, and we're trying to be as generous as we can and open-handed to meet needs. And so we've even this year developed a benevolence process where we're actually meeting with people, we're tracking who we're helping, we're walking with them, we're helping connect them to other local nonprofits that can help, so that, because when word gets out that you're a generous church, I think you sent me a text that said we're going to need a bigger boat, but because when the news told the story of Hope for One, we kind of got inundated, but we had a process and of sustainability and help. Anybody else have a question? Yeah.
What's in operating other than?
Good question. Tim?
Yeah. Operations. So it's administrative fees, subscription type stuff. I would say marketing, things like that. Childcare expenses. Sometimes we have some of those.
Equipment.
Yeah.
We've had to add. That's kind of been a big expense this past year is equipment for this room and for all rooms, and maintaining equipment, childcare equipment, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. So even like the kitchen that we finished up and the door we put in would be included in that amount as well.
No.
Yeah, there wasn't a big dip, at least since I've been here, but I also didn't know what it would look like before that. But I'll let you know if there is, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. I think, so we're still kind of overseen by Orchard Group. So Orchard Group has built the management team, and it helps them. It helps them in their books, and they run our payroll. You can speak to this probably more clearly than I can. But they kind of organize all of that, and it helps their organization. When we have local oversight, I'm going to put it to the board. Please move it back to January, December, because it's so confusing. To me, at least. I don't operate like that. So that's why. Yeah. Good question. We're going to get to that. Yes. And so a couple things that we're looking towards in the future is, one, staffing, because we're relatively understaffed for the size of our church to date, if you look at full-time equivalent, and a possible building situation. If we stay here, this needs improvements that are not going to get done in the reality of where we're at. And if we look to move, those costs of, increase. And so that's just kind of the reality of where we're at. Yeah. Any other questions? It's all hopeful. Regular giving members.
Yeah, it would fluctuate between 200 and 250. Yeah.
You knew that. I was going to look.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, and Michael, maybe you could chime in on this too, but I'm thinking of Planning Center giving. They just sent us like, hey, you've gone over the 250 amount the past 2 months,
I'm not
which
sure
is
it's
always
regular.
a good little notice to get. But we had to like upgrade our subscription to 500, so we're like, okay, now we
Operation
pay $30 more
costs.
a month for
Yeah.
giving. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a number, yeah, that you could consider. I would, and Brent and I talked about this earlier, to encourage okay.
She said if every giving member gave $70 more a month, we'd hit that gap.
Yeah.
And I told Tim, I was like, we had 850 people. If everybody just gave 20 more bucks a month, we'd be fine,
Yeah.
So, but he had a great pastoral answer.
Yeah. The reason I took like 7 minutes to talk about some layers of stepping into generosity was because that is a part of the discipleship of the church. Mm-hmm. And I think for us to consider that in terms of equity, right? Because if we're encouraging percentage-based giving, the single mom who drives Uber, her giving that $10 extra is a huge, that might be a meal for her family. But for some other people in this room to say $70, it's like you may need to be given $700 more on that percentage-based thing, and that promotes equity. It promotes biblical forms of generosity, and that's why I would prefer us to think about it that way. But I appreciate definitely the
And
the
we're
thought.
recording this too, so we'll make this available on YouTube. You can send it to anybody you want. I believe we have about 120 to 130 recurring givers set up. That doesn't mean regular givers, but that's just in the recurring category, just to answer your question more specifically. Anybody else have any questions, comments, criticisms? Yeah. What's the agenda? Okay, yeah, sorry. So as you guys know, we signed the lease. I don't know if you know this, but in 2020, we were meeting outside on that parking lot. We had been meeting on that parking lot for 3 months, and we signed a lease for what this place was expected to become. And the idea was that we were told from the developer then, and we have good relationships with them. Obstacles happened. We understand. The plan was to move into this facility that would seat well over 500 people. How'd that turn out for us? By Easter of 2021. And so we signed a lease, a 5-year lease that was structured with a 2-year out. Because in our estimation, as a management team, a leadership team, we could potentially grow out of the space in 2 years. And so we structured that into the lease. And then we met together outside, and God grew our church, and while we waited and looked at this thing, and we moved in April of 2023, and that first Sunday, I was like, oh no, I don't know if we can be here. So as we have navigated move-in since April, the developer, has hit difficulty with this building. I mean, it doesn't take any kind of rocket scientist to drive onto this property and recognize that there hasn't been work in 7 months, and it's a hard financial reality in the commercial development world. And so kind of what we have right now is what we are going to get to our knowledge. And so they came to us and asked us to increase rent and to a fair market rate, but that was not kind of in our plan. So to kind of be good neighbors and to be equitable, and we committed to that because it's fair for the amount of square footage that we're renting per square foot. Actually, we're getting a decent deal in the city. Now we have to deal with other things because of that deal, but that's kind of the reality that we're in now.
I will also just comment that in that interim period of time where we're paying hardly any rent,
Yes.
those proceeds went to a really awesome place.
Yeah. I mean, you just have to know for a long season, we were paying about $5,000 a month for all of this. So that's like not even rent right now for a 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 2-bath home in Slow. And so we did, but then a lot of those funds went out. We were generous. We did a lot of awesome work. We'll continue to do a lot of awesome work. And so thanks, Kevin. Anything else? Does that help kind of explain the building situation? We're kind of in a little bit of a conundrum right now. And I don't say that to say, like, we don't know what we're going to do. But everybody panic. We have a good plan in place. We know that to stay here will cost something, and to move will cost something. And we're praying for the long-term health and sustainability and hope that I believe Slow City is baked into our DNA that we can share with the city and the region in a really powerful way. So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
How long does the landlord expect us to continue paying on this lease?
Currently, we are month to month because nothing has been signed. So currently, we are month to month. At worst, we are paying on the lease until April of 2025.
Yeah.
Does that help answer your question, Larry? Yes.
425.
No. 300 and
500 persons, but seated.
yeah, standing 500 people
No,
standing shoulder to shoulder. Seated, the most we've ever gotten in this room is 300 and about 75, and that was a couple weekends ago. And it's maxed out at that point. That's why we kind of built in the outdoor patio. That's why we've tried to pay money to wire things out there. It's why we've tried to create spaces for people. So, yes, Carrie?
Maybe I missed something, but like I know we don't have heat and stuff.
Yeah.
How does a developer walk away with an unfinished thing?
Did everybody hear her? We don't have heat. Thank you. How does a developer walk away with, I don't know. That's a Kevin question, I think. He's the owner. Talk to him. I'm joking. I don't. Yeah, it's a money difficulty. It's a business. It's loans, and it's hardship, and it's planning, and it's all the things. Yeah, so even this week, we're trying to fight, and this has been every week, probably every month for the past, just so you all know, this is a family meeting, so I can be real. The weight that this has carried, Jordan can attest when he was on staff, to the weight that maybe we tried to shield from the congregation for a long time, really was a heavy lift on a lot of shoulders. And we've been in planning meetings and building meetings over a space that, kept being, you were here, 90 months, 90 days, 90 days, 90 days, 90 days. And so we were navigating a lot of that stuff. It's just been a burden. And so even this week, Tim's trying to get an answer about HVAC. And so we may have to expense that. Then we're going back and forth. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a constant tale of things breaking, not working,
Yeah.
that we're trying to navigate, and not sinking a bunch of our money as a congregation into something that we may or may not be at long term. And right now, because of the growth, it's looking like probably not, but we don't know. So there are 3 specific ways forward that we're working on and that we're contending for, and then let's share those, and maybe we can see if we answer some of the questions.
Okay. Do you want to share those?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first is that we stay put where we are. Okay, this is
All in favor?
and wait it out and hope and pray that the funding to finish the parking lot and fill the trenches and all that stuff comes through for the people who own this space is a potential. We do have a great lease that the management team and Brent have negotiated and put together. So to be able to utilize that will financially benefit our community because it is the cheapest option that we're aware of in San Luis Obispo right now. The second option is to find a long-term lease somewhere or something that's for sale that is actually a doable amount, which is hard, almost probably impossible to find in this area. But long-term lease could be an option, and do some tenant improvements to make it a space that has the assembly capacity that we need for growth into the future, so we aren't doing 18 services over a period of Saturday and
What's wrong
Sunday
with
at
that?
some point.
What is wrong with 18 services?
It's great. We're reaching people and exhausting everyone on staff. That's what's wrong with it.
Jethro, Moses, you're burning everybody out.
So there's kind of this sliding scale of like staffing and expense and then facility and expense. And at some point you're like, hey, we just need something that's a bit bigger, and you can actually save money on staffing because there aren't as many services. There isn't as much people power that it takes to pull things off. So there are some pieces to that. So that's something that we're actively looking into. We're looking at buildings and spaces that are open and available, and talking with different businesses and companies that are interested in partnering with our church to be able to make it an affordable option for us to do something like that. So there's some good prospects that we're continuing to pursue and look into, and we hope to be able to share more updates about that in the future. We don't have much else to share about that at this point. The third option is you build something from the ground up that fits your community perfectly, which is a huge expense and probably an impossible one.
Yeah.
But it is an option. We'll just put it right there.
Yeah. I'll say, can I speak to this?
Please.
I'll say, kind of one of our desires as a church from the beginning has been to really utilize and lean into kingdom partnership in the city. To really, if you walk into most churches in America, Monday through Friday, they're sitting vacant 6 days out of the week. And so that was the beauty or the idea behind this space, was based out of it keeps our overhead low. We can rent it Wednesdays and Sundays and steal it on Tuesdays. Just joking. Utilize it, borrow it, pay it forward on Tuesdays. I'm joking. Cut that, Luke. Cut that line. But I think that's our hope going forward, is that there's this pie in the sky. I would say we want to kind of redeem, to use Vanessa's term, there's a redemptive thing that happens when you kind of move into a pre-existing building and when you partner with different organizations, and it keeps the burden low on our church, and the building can be utilized for more things that blesses the city. That's our hope in it. And so, we're we're looking at different spaces in the city. There are spaces opening up. We've kind of got a team of people that are, bloodhounds, sniffing the trail, asking questions, kicking tires. And we're just praying, as this was this was a God kind of worked out move for us. We were at Mission Prep High School. We had there was nothing open. There was no space. And God, it's been a burden, but it's also been a blessing. It's been a blessing. This whole journey has been a blessing for us. I feel like we've navigated the Exodus story a little bit, and we're still navigating the Exodus story. We've been nomadic, and God's provided manna just enough for today and just enough for tomorrow. Tipping off the sermon for this Sunday. But God has been so faithful and just saying, trust me, trust me, trust me. And so we wanted to do this to just pull the collective weight too and kind of bring you into some of the burden with us and the prayers with us and the questions with us and the ideas and dreaming with us. And because this is an us thing and you matter to this. So.
And there is a practical piece to this as well, because of the options that are out there. All of those require more resources and finances that we currently have access to. So we're officially like opening a building fund now. Let me tell you something about this. It could be just used to do tenant improvements for the space we're in. Getting HVAC put in to the offices and nursery and preschool room, right?
Just praying a kid doesn't put his finger in the space heater. I'm joking. I'm joking. They make them safe these days. They
put 'em
make
up
them
high.
safe. They make them
Yeah.
safe. They make
You're
them
doing a
really
great
safe.
job.
They've thought about
Your
it.
kids are safe here.
Your kids. Sorry. Cut his mic. I've hit my hour limit. I think I hit
Yeah,
it.
I know, right? But so it could be used for this. It could also be used for potential tenant improvements, for a long-term lease, or other options if they open up. So we want to start saving now as a congregation and community. So this would be an invitation that if you're like, man, I believe that, yes, we need to invest in something for this church to continue to reach and steward what God's doing through this community. You can give tonight. You can set up reoccurring towards that building fund online on the app, and it's just under the drop-down menu, Building Fund, and that will be designated for specific building expenses, whether that's HVAC for the kids' classrooms or it's some sort of tenant improvement option in the future. But we'll make sure that you are in the loop. There's not going to be any decisions made before those things are communicated with the management team and to our congregation, and a chance for people to kind of share their thoughts, perspectives, and opinions. It's super important because, again, this is a we church, right? So that's what we're doing. That's how we're moving forward.
Okay, sounds
That's
good.
good to know.
It's too hot in the 3 to 5. All right,
It
we'll
needs
save
air
money
conditioning.
there.
Is
We'll
that-
save money there.
That's great.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Just any? Yes. Bob.
Mine is not a question, it's a statement. Patricia and I were lucky enough to be at the first service that you had. It's always been exciting, it's always been grateful, and I'm still excited about what's happening here. Appreciate everything that you've done.
You made me shed a tear, Bob. Anybody else have a question? Any question? Yeah, Jim.
Not a question so much. I want to echo what Bob said. We started out in the second meeting back in September of 2019, and I think for any of us that have been around, we can see the evidence that God has always provided a place for us. I mean, like I say, we started mission prep, and COVID hit, but each step along the way, God has provided. It was Octagon Barn we went to, and then we went to a football field, and then we went to parking lot, and then the rains came, and we went to Broad Street. I mean, God has always provided, and this, it just, to me, it's evidence for so many of us have been around to see God is really blessing this church, and I think He will continue to do that.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
This might be an obvious answer, but just hearing the building update, finances, and operations, what are the specific things that we can be praying for you on staff and those that are leading our church?
Staff personal? Yeah, like praying for the staff or the building or just yeah. Yeah, I think it's been a hard couple years for the team. I think in some ways, we've had some transition. We've had some, and just so you all know, staff transition in this kind of 3 to 5 years of a church plant is normal. People told us when we planted, like, the people who you start with aren't the people who you're going to end up with. We're like, no, who wants to leave here? And it's like, so some of the transition is normal. I'm grateful that it's not a staff culture issue. I'm grateful that it's not because of any kind of scandal or anything like that. It's been all healthy conversations and send-offs, and we'll continue to do that. I think you can pray, though, in that of just like a sense of camaraderie and unity going forward. Not that there's disunity, but the enemy tries to, there's a target on every one of our backs, but the enemy tries to sow seeds of discord, and even our own minds can trick us into believing lies. And so just pray for a protective spirit. And then pray, it's a ministry is not a popular career path for many people. And so that means the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And especially in San Luis Obispo, it's hard to hire people here, and even because we have a desire to hire people who are local or California born and bred, and that's hard to do. And so pray for workers and pray for the right people, and that God would build the right team going forward. I think that's kind of heavy on our hearts. What do you think? So he brought us, Tim, Vanessa. What do you think? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're in a season where we're rebuilding the team in a lot of ways, and for the next season, and need a lot of wisdom and discernment to know how to do that well. That's going to provide a great team, a balanced team, a strong, sustainable team into the next season of the church. So,
yeah. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay. Sure? Going once? Going twice? Okay. I'll just wrap up. Last January, we kind of had a vision series called All Things New. I don't know if you remember that. It was in Broad Street. And I kind of came back with just a sense of, man, I just need to kind of share where we're at and share our hope for last year. And it was a kind of a 2-part series about how we want to be committed to health and committed to hope. And not revolutionary words, but health as a staff team, health as a volunteer team, health as, growing healthy financially as a church. Not that we were unhealthy, but maintaining that healthy mission, healthy vision, and committed to continuing to spread hope and be people of hope in the city and globally. That's kind of still like what's resonating in my heart for where we're going. We've seen that this year in unique ways. I think like our volunteer serve teams are healthier than they've ever been. And I'm really excited about the life of our church, the level of engagement, the amount of kids who we are seeing come to church in a month span is amazing. We have more pre-K kids than ever before this past week. So young families are coming. They're eager to get engaged. And we want to continue to create healthy environments for them. And I just want to point back again. I'm going to ramble. I'm sorry. I'm going to try and make this really quickly. I just feel like we've kind of found ourselves back in the life and journey of Moses, and also the story of Exodus and what God was trying to teach a nation that was held captive to slavery and fear and being marginalized and oppressed and all these things. He was trying to teach them, one, how to be free, but ultimately how to be deeply rooted in him again, how to worship, how to relate to one another, how to serve, how to be human. And I feel like that it's kind of been our story. We live in a pretty de-churched area where people maybe grew up to church, but I had a bad experience. I'm not doing that again. Or a never-churched area. I don't know if you've heard this, but this is one of the most never-churched regions in the entire world. More people per capita have never and will never step foot inside the church. And so we want to be a place that helps people kind of reintegrate into life and faith, a safe place, And we want to continue to make spaces for that. I feel like that's kind of the call that God's put on our heart to be a healthy representation of Jesus. And I'm just thankful to be a part of it with you. I could say 1,000 things about what I see going forward. But you just have to know from my perspective, from Jenna's perspective, from our perspective, like, my prayer is that, like, Slow City would be like this huge oak tree in the middle of the city that's just like, I don't know, that just is growing deep roots and spreading and growing up, that everybody, like, there's fruit that everybody can eat off of, and there's just this really, it's a city on a hill, it's a huge oak tree that's bearing fruit that blesses everyone around it, and I'm just really grateful to be a part of this with you. And so, we'll have time. I'm going to leave it open again. Any other questions, comments, anything? I've kind of held you captive for a little bit. If you have any questions, direct them to Tim. If you have any compliments, direct them to Tim. And we love you guys, and thanks for carving out time on a Wednesday night. Can I pray for us? Can I actually, Michael, can I ask you to pray? Is that okay?
Jesus, we come before you tonight, and I'm just awed by all you have done here, the way you've been working over the last several years and provided for Slow City and the people that are here. I thank you for their commitment. Thank you for their desire to grow closer to you and to serve this community. Just all the ways you've blessed Slow City. You've heard the needs tonight as well, the relational needs, the financial needs. And I just thank you that we have you. We have you in our lives to provide for us and to guide us. I just thank you again for this church and the opportunity to be a part of it. We just ask your blessing on each person who comes here and who will come here, and for the way you're working in San Luis Obispo. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Before we leave, I forgot to mention, the building fund is a fund. It's not, we're not necessarily tearing into a building campaign. Some of you guys have gone through that. If anything changes in the next couple months, we'll send out invites and we'll kind of share more news about where we're at. So ask us too, and we'll also send invites and make it available to the church. And so just so you know, going forward, really appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here. And if you have any questions, we're here. All right? Thanks, guys.